In this video, I'll be ranking 5 apex predators from 5 prehistoric eras, with this being a part 1 of 2-part series, whereby in the next part I'll be ranking the other 5 from the next 5 prehistoric eras up till just before the modern day. With these 2 parts, I will be starting with the earliest classing of an apex predator in the Cambrian, all the way to the apex predators that were around in the Ice Age prior to humans. But first, I must class. What is an apex predator? For those who don't know, the definition of an apex predator is: it is an animal that is situated at the very top of its food chain, with these creatures having no natural predators of their own, meaning no animal routinely hunts them. So, for a modern example, a polar bear would be classed as an apex predator, as it is the top consumer and has no natural predators in its environment. However, typically in prehistoric times, this was far more simple, whereby in the modern day we have many apex predators around the globe. Prehistoric times only typically had a few or even just the one apex predator. Oh, and finally, I'm judging these animals on how dominant and effective they were with their builds and as predators during their time, rather than just how good they would be against one another or something like that. But with all that, let me jump straight into it. Anomalocaris. By technicality the Earth's first apex predator, with complete domination over the Cambrian seas, it quickly became the top predator, appearing from 520 to 499 million years ago, with its rise actually following an age previously called the Cambrian Peace. Just goes to show how small the competition Anomalocaris had to face during its time, with the largest species of Anomalocaris reaching around 2 meters or around 6.5 feet in length and weighing up to 2 kilos or around 4.4 pounds. It was the largest animal around at the time. In addition, its evolutionary breakthroughs for the time were wildly impressive, showcasing flap-like appendages that enabled it to move quickly through the water, reaching around 13.7 miles per hour or around 22 kilometers per hour, ensured it outsped most of its prey, only being beaten out by chordates, a species of tiny fish. As well as this, it had extremely complex eyes that had up to 24,000 lenses that allowed it to have the best vision for the age, becoming both a huge base for the future evolution of eyes as well as a great assistance for catching small prey. Anomalocaris' hunting techniques utilize these great eyes, often spotting small, soft-bodied prey that it could easily bite through, using its spiked arms to move the prey into its mouth for easy consumption. With Anomalocaris being also extremely influential to the eras that followed the Cambrian, forming the first top-down hierarchy that we know of, being the blueprint of today in our modern food chains. As well as this, it's accredited with causing the later armour boom of the Cambrian and early Ordovician, whereby prey animals utilize hard shells, spikes, exoskeletons, etc. to withstand predators' bites of the time, such as Anomalocaris. Despite this, however, Anomalocaris did have some weaknesses. With the Anomalocaris' eyes, while being extremely complex, they were also very delicate, especially following whenever it shedded its exoskeleton, whereby its entire body became fairly fragile and soft, making it so any struggling prey or obstacles could cause major damage if Anomalocaris wasn't careful, with Anomalocaris eventually dying out after having reigned apex predators for around 15 to 20 million years. This being mostly due to the increased armour and speed from its rapidly evolving prey, with the Anomalocaris simply not being able to keep up and simply just being left in the dust. A tier for Anomalocaris for being responsible for the fundamental structure of ecosystems and clearly uncontested domination over the Cambrian. Cameroceras, the second apex predator of Earth, taking the crown following the Anomalocaris. Appearing from 470 to 445 million years ago, it was the largest animal the Earth has seen up to that point, being a whopping 6 to 9 meters or around 19 to 29 feet in length and weighing around 200 to 1,000 kilos or around 440 to 2,200 pounds, with Cameroceras acting as a sort of large stealth predator during the Ordovician, mostly occupying the era's shallow seas and coral reef habitats, utilizing its muscular tentacles to reach through all sorts of gaps and hiding spots amongst these habitats in order to pull out any unsuspecting prey, with Cameroceras adapting greatly to the previous armor boom, having a sharp keratin beak in the center of its mouth, in order to pull any prey that caught with its tentacles into a crushing bite. Due to this, Cameroceras was able to crush and crack any armor of the time, with its main prey consisting of trilobites and small fish. This was largely unmatched at the time, with the next biggest animal to Cameroceras being Eriocasis beremuli, a 2-meter long, or around 6.6 feet long, giant filter feeder that posed no threat to Cameroceras, making it so size alone provided Cameroceras with a complete dominion over the Ordovician seas for around 25 to 30 million years, with Cameroceras actually being so uncontested that many paleontologists theorize that it acted as a sort of catalyst for fish and sea scorpions to evolve, in order to combat being hunted so frequently by Cameroceras. In addition, following the Ordovician mass extinction that heavily weakened Cameroceras populations, the rapid evolving fish and sea scorpions is just exactly what teetered Cameroceras' extinction over the edge, with the reduced Cameroceras populations not being able to keep up with the evolutionary leaps in speed and versatility that both fish and sea scorpions and many other species undertook, eventually leading to their extinction around 420 million years ago. Solid-ative Cameroceras. Being too good as an apex predator at what you do is kind of a flex. Following the Ordovician, there was a massive collapse during the late Ordovician mass extinction that led a whole reset on various ecosystems, leaving the world in a very broken state, with large predators for the most part going extinct, leaving the doors open to those that survived to take the top spot. This in turn led to the rise of a particular species, this being sea scorpions. With fish and various other species still recovering, it made for the perfect entrance for sea scorpions, with their highly versatile builds. They were fairly big, being around 2.5 meters in length, or around 8.2 feet, and weighing around 200 kilos, or around 440 pounds. Using adaptations such as paddled legs, they traversed both the shore and a variety of water habitats around the world. With their excellent binocular vision and razor-sharp claws, they arose from the shadows as the next apex predator in the majority of regions of the globe, from around 440 to 380 million years ago. Sea scorpions inhabited nearly every biome on Earth, with sea scorpions being found in rivers, lagoons, shorelines, seas, and oceans, with sea scorpions being so successful in this that they unintentionally pioneered freshwater life, being some of the first to regularly inhabit freshwater habitats following their travels onto land. This pioneering was further pushed by later species that were related to sea scorpions, with sea scorpions being credited to giving rise to scorpions and spiders, some of the first terrestrial animals of the time. Although they were extremely successful at their apex predatoring, using both their versatile movement and sharp appendages, Their successful builds did have some major drawbacks, with sea scorpions often struggling with flexible or quick movements, as well as having a huge vulnerability upon molting their exoskeletons. Both of these combined provided a base for faster, more agile builds to become more favoured in the future, especially in fish, with sea scorpions dying out after being apex for around 40 million years, only having died from such rapid evolution, with fish rapidly evolving during this time, spec'd into both armoured, stronger and faster builds that the sea scorpions simply couldn't compete with. This caused many sea scorpions' food sources to run thin, and while they didn't go completely extinct, they lost the rule that they once had going into the Devonian. Solid C tier for sea scorpions, with them having one of the longest rules out of any prehistoric apex predator of 40 million years. However, with the world's ecosystem being so weak during this time, it was not especially hard to keep the title of apex during this time, which hindered it from gaining the prestige of a sort of domination over the ecosystem that other apex predators previously had. Dunkleosteus shortly took the light following the sea scorpion's reign as an example of a new age with the Age of Fishes, from around 382 to 358 million years ago. Dunkleosteus, a now extinct class of a heavily armoured fish family known as placoderms, that largely took over the Devonian era, with Dunkleosteus at the top. This was a large fish, being around 3.5 to 4.1 meters long, or around 11.5 to 13.5 feet, and weighing around 950 to 1,200 kilos, or around 2,000 to 2,600 pounds. However, size is not the main reason that this fish was the apex of the time. It innovated largely with its jaw and mouth, like other placoderms of the time, but in a bigger and better way, with an entirely bone jaw that had a crushing force of around 5,000 newtons or around 1,100 psi. And while this isn't a lot compared to modern sharks such as the great white at around 18,000 newtons of force or around 6,800 psi, the Dunkleosteus had a niche trait that we don't see in the modern day. Due to its sharpening bone jaws, instead of your typical teeth, the sharp edge of the top of and bottom of its jaw were constantly grinding against each other whenever it ate, forcing the tips of the edges to be constantly razor sharp. This in turn generated a huge concentrated force of around 80,000 psi. This being compared to the modern great white's concentrated force of only around 5,300 psi really puts this into perspective. Coupling this immense bite force with the fact that it could snap its jaws at only 20 milliseconds created a fearsome apex predator, with Dunkleosteus being capable of easily breaking ammonites, trilobites, and even hypothetically being able to bite straight through materials like chainmail. In addition to this, the entirety of its head and vital organs were covered with a 2-inch thick bone plating, making it practically an underwater indestructible meat grinder, with Dunkleosteus influencing ancient seas greatly during its time as an apex predator, with Dunkleosteus officially burying the idea of an age of armour, and rather having the eras to come being more favoured towards those who spec'd into speed or power-based builds. Despite all these impressive feats, however, Dunkleosteus were renowned for being slow, and especially renowned for being dependent on a high calorie intake. This became especially obvious following the Hangenberg event, around 359 million years ago, whereby the populations of Dunkleosteus prey reached critical lows, causing a massive population crash in Dunkleosteus that eventually caused its extinction. Solid S tier. With around 24 million years of reign, it completely mastered a build that was so successful. As well as this, it steered the next few eras on what sort of builds would become successful and not, and officially ended the age of armor from its sheer efficiency at crushing and shattering those species that spec so heavily into armor. The rapidly changing environment of the Carboniferous sure did bring out some of the wildest creatures of prehistory, with giant dragonflies called Meganeura, millipedes the lengths of small school buses called Arthropleura, and some of the world's first lizards. Despite all this rapid change, however, the apex predators of the time still very much so lied in the waters, with Rhizodus being the top of the food chain. Measuring around 7 meters or around 23 feet in length and weighing up to 2 tons or around 2,000 kilos or 4,400 pounds, it officially classed as the largest freshwater bony fish to have ever lived, with giant front fangs that were around 8.5 inches or around 22 centimeters long. It was perfectly adapted for gripping and tearing various sharks, amphibians, and giant bugs straight in half, with Rhizodus utilizing the dense swamp waters of the Carboniferous to perform grand stealth attacks on any prey near the banks of rivers or lakes, using its strong pectoral fins to both rapidly move through the shallow waters and also to have the capability to partially go onto land to extend its reach to the prey that wandered near the shoreline. In addition, Rhizodus became a big innovator in hunting strategy. Due to its fang teeth, it was much more built for gripping onto prey rather than shredding it. In doing so, it believed that Rhizodus would perform some sort of death roll like modern day crocodiles in order to rip apart its prey into edible chunks, with Rhizodus also being credited to being a driving factor for inland evolution, with many species such as amphibians later down the line specking into traits that ensured it could avoid the water at any cost. However dominant in shallow seas and swamps though, Rhizodus did often struggle when it came to deep waters, with Rhizodus simply not being able to withstand the harsh currents and unpredictable weather that came with deeper waters, being much more built towards short bursts of energy to surprise prey, rather than having the stamina to withstand the open seas. Overall, this would lead Rhizodus to be completely defenseless when the hotter and drier climates of the early Permian came around, in which notably huge portions of swamps and shallow seas dried up, leaving Rhizodus out of options, officially ending its 30 million year reign around 300 million years ago, following the collapse of the Carboniferous's famous swamp habitats going into the Permian. This leaves Rhizodus in a solid B tier. While I think they were successful having ruled over the habitat for over 30 million years, and having an amazingly well-spec'd build for such a niche environment, this also ended up being their downfall. With their dependency on swamps and shallow sea habitats, it made them extremely vulnerable to any changes with their environment, making it so they can't quite squeak into A tier just from a huge lack of versatility. And with that, that is part 1 of the prehistoric apex predators tier list. Tell me in the comments if you agree or disagree with my rankings, or if you think that you'd like to see a part 2 to this video, or any other video that you'd like me to cover, as I do read them all, so feel free to let me know. But with that, I thank you for watching, and goodbye.